Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a superhero movie review and I'll be having a look at Iron Man 3. So I've literally just come out of the cinema having just watched this, so I'll give you my thoughts on it. So this review will it's going to have sort of two parts. The first bit is going to be non-spoilery and I'll talk about some of the thoughts and some negatives and positives on that one. And then halfway through I'm going to give you a spoiler warning and then I'm going to go into some of the spoilers. Now, I would suggest if you haven't seen this film, is to kind of go into it a little bit cold because there's quite a major twist in this that I wasn't aware of, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't see and I didn't know about it. So I'd recommend, if unless you just can't help yourself, just seeing the film without actually watching those spoilers. So let's get on with it. So Iron Man 3 obviously takes place after the Avengers, and the Avengers movie is referenced quite frequently in it. So, I'm not going to go too much into the plot, basically, but the you know the premise. I'm sure you've seen the trailers. The world is, or the America is kind of getting attacked by this terrorist called the Mandarin, who keeps hijacking TV sort of channels and sort of showing terrorist acts and things like that. At the same time, you've got a kind of previous business rival maybe to Tony Stark sort of turning up, wanting to sort of join forces on a particular product or a particular sort of technology. After an attack, basically Happy Hogan is injured. You kind of know this is going to happen. This is kind of so it's not too spoilery, that bit. And Iron Man is basically, or Tony Stark is going to sort of seek revenge. So without sort of going too much into the sort of spoilery bits here, it's a darker in tone, but it's not. When I say darker, it's not dark like the Batman films. It's just slightly darker in tone than the previous two Iron Man films. There is still quite a lot of comedy in there. It's still a funny film. Robert Downey Jr. is still on top form, and his character is very, very consistent. There are quite a lot of Avengers nods, and a lot of people keep sort of asking Tony about the Avengers. And throughout the film, he's sort of having these sort of panic attacks because he's kind of he's obviously aware now, obviously, about all these extraterrestrial threats and stuff like that. Now, one thing I would say about this film most reminds me of the recent James Bond films. So if I can give this film a comparison, forget the other two Iron Mans, this film is most like a James Bond film, even to the fact that the bad has got this kind of like this big hidden lair and with all these sort of guards and things like that. And a lot of the film actually is Tony without the armor and sort of using his sort of ingenuity and things like that. And it does remind me so much of the sort of James Bond sort of franchise, really, certainly the Daniel Craig ones at least. I think the bad guys are pretty decent in it, so they're not like in previous films. Obviously, we've had the sort of the armoured sort of style bad guys. It's quite kind of different for the most part in this film as well, so it's nice to sort of see that. And the plot is actually quite complex. So I would recommend sort of seeing this and sort of paying attention to the plot, because you probably, if you're not really paying attention, there are a few bits that you may miss. So it's a relatively intelligent plot, which is quite good. Right, let me see what else I can tell you that isn't going to be too spoily. Okay, so a couple of sort of negative things that aren't going to be too spoilery. So the panic attacks for me were a little bit. They were a little bit too much. It just seemed to be a little bit. It was kind of like, it just seemed to be a bit too much for just sort of someone sort of says New York and aliens, and he has like these sort of panic attacks, and just for all the stuff that we've seen Iron Man do, for someone just to sort of say aliens and then to almost have a panic attack, it almost seems a little bit too much to me. I understand people will be affected psychologically about that, but it was maybe a little bit overdone, I thought, possibly. Okay, that's pretty much it that I can really tell you. I will say this in regards to sort of positives. I think it's a much more mature film. It's well directed. Shane Black's did a great job All the cast do a fantastic job, and it does give you a natural progression of the character, and it feels this film, having watched obviously the other two films as well, you do get the impression this feels like a complete trilogy. Right, so from this point on, it's going to get a little bit spoilery. So spoiler warning. If you don't want to know some quite heavy plot details, I suggest you stop watching now and come back to this video at a later point. If you've obviously seen the film or you just can't help yourself, carry on. Right, so there are some major spoilers here, as I've just said. So one of let's go straight in with the biggest one. The Mandarin is completely different to what you've seen before, and you'll be thinking, if you haven't seen this already, you'll think, oh yeah, well we know he's not Chinese. That's not what I'm talking about. The Mandarin doesn't exist. The Mandarin is not the bad guy in this film. It's Killian, and the Mandarin is basically just an actor, purely just giving this of the American people a face of the fear, while Killian, being the real bad guy and pulling the strings, is actually the sort of the bad guy. Ben Kingsley plays the Mandarin. He's just like some English actor called Trevor, I think. And when Tony Stark confronts him, he's just kind of he's like Austin Powers. He's kind of like the intelligence of Austin Powers. So now that's going to, for a negative point for a purist, this is going to really annoy some people, I think, because Mandarin has always been one of the sort of, if not the sort of arch villain of Iron Man, and they've really completely changed it. Now, for me personally, I never actually liked the Mandarin, to be quite honest with you. I much preferred Tony Stark going against people like the Crimson Dynamo, Spy Master, Ghost, people like that. So I was never a big fan of the Mandarin. So personally, I quite liked the twist. I thought it was quite good. But I know some people who are going to be, maybe the purists, won't like the way that it is. So that's kind of the main sort of spoiler for this. Now, we've seen in previous sort of previews and stuff, they may have multiple bad guys. Radioactive Man, Firepower, Cold Blood are all sort of rumoured to be in it. They're not as sort of, the costume bad guys that you may have seen in the comics. Some of the actual characters do turn up, but Cold Blood, I suppose, is he is in it the most, I guess. But he's just basically Killian's sort of second in command, really. But he's not in any type of suit or anything. He's basically got the Extremists sort of technology in him, basically. But he's not any different from really any other Extremist sort of soldier. Radioactive Man. Now you may be aware there's two versions of this film. So there's a Chinese cut which has got some different scenes in it. Now there's virtually no, in the version, obviously the UK version, there's virtually no scenes in China or with Chinese actors, apart from one scene where Tony's having, at the end of the film, he's having an operation done. But that's it, and that's a few seconds. So I don't think it's going to be that much different in the Chinese cut. I guess we'll find out at some point. The end of credit scene doesn't mention anything to do with Guardians of the Galaxy, like it was previously reported. It's not really a particularly crucial scene. It's just a comedy exchange between Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. Not the best dinger I've seen. It was it was funny, but it really was it's just a throwaway line. So the other sort of, I guess, the major spoiler, we've heard that Tony Stark Robert Downey Jr. has sort of said he's not too worried about playing Iron Man again, and this film actually wraps up Iron Man's story. So potentially this will be the end of it. So at the end of the film, basically, he's blowing up all of the Iron Man suits. So he self-destructs, and not because he needs to sort of, he just decides to do it, basically, just to have a clean slate, he says. And he manages to have the shrapnel that was in his heart removed, and takes out his arc reactor. So now he has really no technology in him at all, and all his suits are gone. So this very much is in a place where if they didn't want to bring Iron Man back, they could leave it, and you know, it would be a natural end to his story. I guess you could, you know, he could reinsert the arc reactor and what have it, and still have it, so that he can still come back if Marvel decide that they want to, you know, bring him back either with Robert Downey Jr. or have him another actor. But as it stands now, if they wanted to, they could just leave it, and that will be the end of Iron Man in the Marvel universe. So as I said, Aldrich Killian is the main bad guy in this, which is quite a clever ruse, because I thought they covered that up quite well. I actually thought he was just going to be more of a supporting bad guy in this. He's actually pretty decent, and what I liked about him, he's not a kind of armoured guy. He's a very different foe to... he's still a technology-based foe, but different to, say, you know, to Obadiah Stane or Whiplash that we've seen in the previous film. So he injects like the Extremists technology, which basically almost makes him look like a lava man. He's able to sort of like almost be a bit like Colossus from X-Men, but able to sort of give off heat and things like that. He can actually like breathe fire and stuff and melt things with his hands. You've also got a couple of sort of nods to other things. AIM, he's obviously you put it in this again, he's obviously developed AIM, so he's actually the sort of the founder of AIM in this, and there's no mention of Moloch in this at all. So again, that could be something else that potentially could be developed, but at the moment it is just, and there's none of the yellow suits either, so there's none of that. It's just called AIM. One sort of little minor Easter egg, one of his sort of cohorts is Ellen Brandt, who's actually the wife of Man-Thing. So that kind of gives you a very sort of a link to another sort of lesser known Marvel character. So going into sort of some of the other sort of maybe, I mean, I'm nitpicking this, but I actually really enjoyed this film. I think it's a great addition. I think I still prefer Iron Man 1 over the entire Iron Man trilogy, but it's a very, very close second to me. It is way better than Iron Man 2, and I think I say Iron Man 1 purely because that was maybe the you know, before Iron Man 1 we hadn't sort of seen it before. So given the choice, I prefer Iron Man 1 out of the trilogy, but I think realistically this is probably as good a film as Iron Man 1. A couple of small little minor points with me that kind of so they're not major criticisms. I've already spoke about the kind of panic attacks that maybe are a little bit too kind of forced for me. There's a couple of other kind of minor things maybe that kind of just a little bug me a little bit. I forget the character's name. I think it's Maya. She's basically one of the again, one of Killian's sort of henchwomen, but she's actually sort of she's actually kind of undercover almost and acting like a sort of a friend to Tony Stark, but she sort of has a change of heart when Tony Stark's captured. But she's been working with Killian for 13 years, and Tony just sort of says 2 lines to her, and she has a change of heart, which I thought her kind of, that was a little bit contrived for me. It just seems, you know, for someone they've worked together for 13 years, Tony Stark literally says a couple of lines to her, and she sort of flips on her boss. I wasn't really buying that. The suits, you've seen in the trailers that there's a scene where all of these sort of suits come up. That is a fantastic action set piece, I have to say. This film has got some great action set pieces, and that's the fantastic. So you've got all these suits that turn up, and they're fighting all of these sort of like extremist soldiers. Really, really good scene. But they seem to the suits, and when Tony Stark is in the suits, he seems, because he kind of hops between a lot of the suits. So you'll sort of see him. He doesn't just wear one suit. He kind of jumps between a few of them. But the suits seem to be a lot weaker in this film than they do in the other 2 films. You know, just as I say, these extremist guys have basically got sort of heat powers, and they just seem to sort of slice through the Iron Man armor pretty damn quickly. when you know we've seen basically Iron Man sort of almost survive a nuclear blast, but these guys can kind of cut through it pretty quick. So it's just a minor niggle for me. And the only other minor niggle that I have with this is you've got William Sadler playing the president here. Now, obviously, him playing the president, this is the same president that's going to be in the Avengers, the Hulk, Captain America, everything. So he's captured by Killian's people. But if the president had been captured, I would have expected to at least have heard from S.h.i.e.L.D. But there's nothing. No Captain America, no S.h.i.e.L.D. This is purely an Iron Man film. And I understand that now you've created this kind of shared universe, it can potentially create problems on this. Why haven't we even heard from Captain America or S.h.i.e.L.D. at all? I mean, granted, they may be off doing their own things. I'm assuming probably Thor: The Dark World and Captain America: Winter Soldier are probably going to be happening around the same sort of times, but we don't know that at this point. And you would expect to have at least get some sort of, we can't help you now, Tony, we've got something else that's going on or whatever, at least from S.h.i.e.L.D. I can understand maybe from Captain America, Thor or whatever, but I would have at least expected to hear some sort of communication from, doesn't have to be Nick Fury, but just something. But to me, they're only sort of small little nitpick criticisms that I have of this film. The actual film itself it's a fantastic roller coaster ride. The set pieces are brilliant. Really, really enjoyed the film. The ending of the film, as I say, you've got Tony Stark sort of giving up Iron Man, which it's kind of a good ending for the trilogy. But obviously, I think people want to see more Iron Man. But I've got a feeling that's more to do with sort of Robert Downey Jr. than anything else. And obviously, I think the way they've done it is to sort of leave it at a point where he could come back if he wants, or they could just leave it. Who knows? But for me, I really enjoyed this film. It's certainly one of the best superhero films out there. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Have you seen it? Let me know what you think. And do you agree with any of my criticisms? And do you have any criticisms of it? And please don't put spoilers in the comments though for me. All right, thanks very much. Enjoy. See you next time.